Long after its actual official announcement, we are finally getting some real news with Dune Sisterhood, which will be coming out tentatively for HBO with Legendary helping out. So, what is occurring? Well, essentially, we have two major bits of news, which is the casting of Valya Harkonnen with Emily Watson and with Tula Harkonnen with Henderson. Now, I will be perfectly frank. I'll not be saying much about Henderson because I don't really know her work. I've actually seen some of her films, but being brutally honest, I don't remember her. So, it's unfortunate. But good news, Watson, I do know. I've actually seen a lot of her work. I highly recommend it. She is insanely talented, very good. Now, my own viewpoint is partisan. I think her best role is with Paul Thomas Anderson with a film from the early 2000s. Amazing film, probably one of the best films of all time. A very interesting, strange romantic comedy with lots of other elements. Highly recommended. So she is a major talent. She's been in the industry for quite a while. And apparently she worked with Rank, who will be directing at least the first episode and will be helping the showrunner to craft the early look of Dune Sisterhood. They worked on Chernobyl together. Now, she's not a major part of Chernobyl, as I understand it. She just had a supporting role, but apparently that was sufficient for her to get an audition and or be recommended for this role. But I want to forewarn people that the news is not what it appears from the official media. I don't think, to put it frankly, that they know Dune that well, so they may have misreported a few things. Now, I'm leaning here on Quinn's ideas. For those who don't know, he's a major YouTuber who covers Dune. He knows his stuff. I would say, however, in my personal opinion, he has somewhat compromised himself. That's fine. It happens. He's become very big. Those things will happen. But I was only able to catch a bit of his live stream, but he did comment very frankly that even though they're saying that this will be based on the Brian Herbert novel Sisterhood of Dune, and that is the title of the TV series, it really won't have much to do with, at least canonically, the novel that he and Anderson put out. Because Valya and Tula are characters in that novel, apparently. Again, I want to stress I did not read it, so I cannot confirm this, but they're not major parts of the story. In fact, the Bene Gesserit is not really a big part of, quote, Dune Sisterhood. So they may be using the names, but they're probably not going to be following the novel. This will probably be a story just using the character names, and they'll make up their own story. It's set thousands and thousands of years before the events of, quote, the first Dune novel, and presumably the first Dune film by Denis Villeneuve. And we are being promised that we will get a little bit more with the Butlerian Jihad. If you're new to the Dune fandom, what is the Butlerian Jihad? Well, that's still somewhat disputed. The way I understand it from the Frank Herbert canon, the Butlerian Jihad, yes, was a violent uprising. It was aimed at basically getting rid of artificial intelligence and limiting some very advanced technology, which explains why people have to use ornithopters and use much more limited forms of technology than you might expect. The way I understood it, the Butlerian Jihad was mainly a philosophical movement. There was violence involved, of course, but at least the way Frank Herbert stylized it, and again, we just get bits and pieces of the jihad, it was mainly a philosophical movement to limit technology. Now, Brian Herbert has gone much further. He has made entire novels explicitly going into details for what he considers the Butlerian Jihad. And that will probably bring up a major tension with this adaptation. Namely, are they following the Frank Herbert understanding of the Dune universe, or will they be pulling it closer to the Brian Herbert end of the canon? With the actual name and even premise, I don't think Brian Herbert is much involved. He is going to be a producer on this, but again, I would assume it's just a legal formality that they're using the name Dune Sisterhood just to give them a paycheck, frankly. But they are not obligated to follow the story in Dune Sisterhood novel, which is good because, again, it might be too constraining and confining and distortive of the Frank Herbert mythology. That said, this is the very beginning. This is some very good news, very interesting news with casting, but there are many more rules to fill out, and we don't yet have more precise plot details. And hopefully soon we'll be getting more with conceptual art and a first look at what they're going to be up to with Dune Sisterhood. On a final note, I will say that Legendary and Warner Brothers recently have had a lot of tensions with one another. This may or may not affect the production, but I just want to be totally honest with the subscribers and new people. So Legendary, with good reason, has a lot of problems with Warner Brothers, which when they marketed the first Dune film, they lost a lot of money because they forced them to put Dune on the streaming service. Apparently, they lost a lot of money on that. So they're not happy with Warner Brothers, and they have signaled they may be working with another studio. This may not have any impact on Dune Sisterhood because Legendary Television may be separate from quote unquote Legendary in film production. So it could be they will work with HBO reluctantly on Dune Sisterhood on television, but they may be shopping around the film rights for Dune elsewhere with another studio. So it's all very interesting. It's all very crazy in the corporate world. But the bottom line is apparently Dune will be moving forward, at least with this version of Sisterhood. But I will have to keep people updated as to what exactly they will be doing and whether they will be adapting more the Frank Herbert canon versus the Brian Herbert canon. A lot more to say because this is very big news, but in terms of the essentials, that is it. I will keep people updated as more information comes my way. Thank you for listening.